you are seeing non-college educated Latinos begin to vote like non-college educated white voters. And that is bad news for Democrats because non-college educated white people are at the core of the Trump coalition.
Political strategist Brian Goldsmith on Katie Couric making the point that Latinos, as they assimilate over the generations, are starting to change their political vote patterns. Look at this number. Trump gained 35% among Latino support in 4 years. That's pretty astounding. With us to discuss is Antonio Villaraigosa. He was LA's first Latino mayor in 130 years, is now running to be the next governor of California. Mr. Mayor, welcome back to The Issue Is.
Great to be with you as always, Alex.
Good to see you. So what happened with Latinos specifically?
Well, they're invisible. I mean, let's be honest. One party demonizes them and they're invisible with the other party. And they have been for a long time. I said a long time ago, 6 years ago to be exact, that we can't be a party of just people that drive a Tesla and not a Toyota pickup or ride a bus like my mother did. You know, people have been saying for a while now that the economy is important to them, that paying for gas and groceries is something they're struggling with, that the rents are too high, that there's not enough housing, that their kids, they're worried that their kids are not going to have the life they had. It used to be that home ownership was part of the American dream, and now renting an apartment with two other roommates close to your house is part of the dream. So I think we just weren't listening to Latinos and people that don't have an education. It doesn't, if you don't have a college education, it doesn't mean you're stupid. It means that you have other experiences. They're the majority of people in this country last time I looked. And you would think that we would be focusing on the majority, but we didn't. And so from my vantage points, what Brian said is true. More and more you're seeing Latino voters, particularly Latino males, vote like white males who don't have an education, because only 13% of Latinos have a college education, a four-year college education.
Do you think the politics of immigration have changed too, as generations are here longer legally?
Well, we've seen this movie before. We saw it in 1994. With Proposition 187. Look, many of us said for a long time, every country has a right to enforce their immigration laws, to strengthen their border, but I believe, and most do, that we ought to have a legal path to citizenship. Now, on the issue of the recent immigration, there's been concern. They came supposedly under the refugee status, in other words, political refugees. Most of them were crossing the border for economic reasons. So yes, it's true, people were concerned about that, particularly the numbers of people. The Republicans had an opportunity to deal with a pretty tough bill on that issue, and they refused to do it for politics. But there's no question that immigration is an issue, particularly on the border states, but all across the country. The question is, are we going to do smart things around immigration, or the mass deportation of people, which would completely undermine the California economy, the Texas economy, the Arizona, New Mexico economies?
Well, let's talk about that. This idea, because Trump says his big thing is mass deportation. A lot of polls suggest that mass deportation is popular as a concept. Do you think that that's realistic? Do you think he actually wants to do that? And what sort of impact does that have on California?
It's popular until it isn't. When people start seeing their family members, their employees, when we can't find dishwashers and cooks in our restaurants, when our fields are empty of workers, and our construction sites are missing the number of workers that we need, that's going to change. nobody's ever questioned the idea that we should prioritize, as an example, people who commit serious crimes and felonies. But the notion that we're going to deport 11 million people may sound good to some people right now, but wait till it actually happens.
Well, and people that think that housing affordability is an issue now, that food prices is an issue now, could you imagine if you took all of that out of the economy, the price increase that would be on everybody?
Well, that and tariffs, which the estimates are from $6,000 to $8,000 a family each year if we were to raise tariffs the way that Trump has said. Look, I think people are in this state. There's no question. This is the lowest Democratic vote since Bush, I think, in 2004. Or 2004. 2004. There's no question that there's, a course correction that people are looking for. I think they're looking for a course correction on crime.
Well, yeah.
That's why I got behind Proposition 136. Look, I said from the beginning, I lost an election because the other side said I was going to be soft on crime. So the first thing I did, and I learned something, crime is important to people until it's not. So, when I became mayor, LA was one of the most violent big cities in America. When I left, we had 1950 levels of crime. And so when I saw people say, for instance, that crime is down from 2 years ago, people don't feel it. And when people don't feel it, they want a course correction. Sure. And when we have, the kind of,
images like we're looking
at there, of people just breaking into stores multiple times and stealing things. When you read about the follow home robberies and people robbing you when you have a watch in even the most affluent areas of the city, people say, hold it. It doesn't mean they want to return to the days of mass incarceration. I'm the former president of the ACLU. I chaired the anti-death penalty initiative twice while I was mayor of LA. Nobody is for, or certainly I'm not, for the mass incarceration of people, but when you exaggerate like they did on Proposition 136, most of the people didn't buy it, about 70%.
Well, let's talk.
And by the way, I was the only candidate running for governor that actually took that position because I listened to people.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that issue. So Prop 36 on the issue of crime was put forward. It increases certain drug penalties, theft penalties, passed overwhelming. Over 70% of people backed it. You backed it, but almost all of the Democratic leadership did not. Governor Newsom did not. Why do you think there's such a divide on this issue between the state Democratic Party and where actual voters are, most of whom are Democrats?
Remember I just said that I think people are looking for common sense. They're not looking for ideologues. I came out of the civil rights movement. I was president of the ACLU. I am unabashedly against the mass incarceration of people. When we took crime down in 1950 levels, it wasn't just with more cops or taking guns off the streets. It was dramatically expanding after school programs and summer youth jobs. It was an all of the above approach. The notion that we're just going to follow ideology and not common sense, I think, is where people lost their way.
Yeah, but why do you think the Democratic Party leadership doesn't see that?
Because they're not listening to people. Because they spend too much time focused on what was the mass incarceration of people and didn't see the need for a course correction. It didn't mean we have to go back to 3 strikes you're out like one newspaper opined. It means that at the end of the day, we can balance and say, hold it, I think we need a course correction. If, by the way, on the drugs, if you don't get rehab after 3 times and get arrested for serious drugs like fentanyl, crack cocaine, yes, you go back to jail. It doesn't mean you go back to jail for 60 years. It means you go back to jail until you realize that, hey, you need rehab. Now, speaking of that, as governor, I'm going to make sure we have enough resources for drug rehab programs, because that's important.
Yeah,
they made the argument that we don't have
right.
enough. We've got to ensure that they do. But that can't be a reason why we take the position that you can keep on getting arrested for drug crimes and never go to jail.
Sure.
That didn't pass the smell test.
So you're running for governor. I know you ran against Governor Newsom the last time. This Prop 36 is one difference between the two of you, but what do you think is the biggest difference between you, Antonio Villaraigosa, as governor potentially going forward, and the current governor?
Look, I'm not running against the current governor. I'll tell you what's the difference between me and the other candidates very clearly. I've made it clear. When I see some in the legislature talk about closing down refineries and making it almost impossible to operate refineries, which, by the way, produce the cleanest fuels in the United States of America, lay off thousands of union workers. Are we going to just push more of those people to Trump? At the end of the day, why aren't we building transmission in this state? Why is it that last year Texas passed up California on solar and wind? Why is it that Florida and Texas are drawing down more money from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act than California? I'll tell you why. We spend too much time setting these goals that, while maybe attainable, we're not doing anything to make them happen. We let the perfect get in the way of the good, and we don't focus our efforts on building the transmission we need and the battery power that we need so that we can get to 100% renewables. We're not going to, we have people that say that natural gas shouldn't be a transition fuel. Well, we don't have the battery power right now. We're working on it to do all solar and all, wind. I have, as mayor, #1 American city in reducing carbon emissions, #5 in the world. So when I hear these people that constantly, take positions which are ideological and rigid and not willing to drive down a lane where we're moving forward just on ideology, I'm not for that. And I think that's what distinguishes me from the other candidates and some other Democrats.
On that point then, 2035 in California right now, there's supposed to be the end of the sale of gas-powered cars. That's a mandate that Governor Newsom has supported. Would you support that? Will you change that?
I've said real clearly, I'm supportive of that. Well, then why aren't we building transmission lines? We need more transmission if we're going to get there. All those goals sound great. When I was mayor, I actually met them. And I met them because we were smart and we were focused, and we didn't let the perfect get in the way of the good. And I think too many people are looking for perfect. And I'll tell you something, most people are looking for results. And that's what I'm focused on as someone who's a proven problem solver.
Let's have a little bit of fun to end this. We play personal issues on this show. It's just 30 seconds on the clock to get to know your cultural favorites. Get away from some of the talking points. Here we go. What is the TV show that you've binged recently?
Oh, that one's easy. Handmaiden.
Handmaid's Tale, right?
Handmaid's Tale.
Okay. Best book you've read lately.
It's a book by David Lionheart, something about what America used to be, about the economy and how Democrats have forgotten the little guy. And David Lionheart, I can't remember the name.
Okay.
It's a great book.
Okay, and who's your favorite musical artist?
It's still Tupac.
Tupac?
Yeah. You know why? I just love the way he spoke. He had his ear to the ground. He spoke to the pain of young people. He also spoke to their aspirations, and I love. My favorite is "Keep Your Head Up." We gotta respect our women, and we gotta be accountable.